have something to confess. I have a dirty little secret that I didn't even want to admit to myself. I go to the supermarket and I would buy 2 packets of those, and I would eat one in the car on the way home, and then I would share the other packet with him, which I would eat most of because he eats them way slower than me, and never thought about the fact that that's the behaviour of an addict. You know, it really is. It's the behaviour of an addict, and but that's what I did, and never kind of admitted to anyone that was a thing, but it actually was. Hi there, my name is Sue, and if you've not been to my channel before, I've been on the carnivore diet now for a little bit over 21 months, and I'm now doing a high-fat carnivore diet, which I've been doing for just about 2 weeks now. So, little update on my high-fat carnivore diet. I am today down 1.5 kilos in just under 2 weeks, so I'm extremely happy with that, and feeling good and feeling very, very, very satiated, which is an interesting thing and part of what I want to talk about here today. So what spurred me to do this video is I was watching a video yesterday, I think it was, with Coach Bronson interviewing Serena. I've got her name written down here, Serena from Carnivore Revolution, and she was talking about her eating disorder, binging habits prior to carnivore. And, you know, I've listened to different people talking about, you know, their eating disorders, food addictions, and all the rest of it. And little bits kind of would trigger something in me, but I think it's time for me to admit to myself that I really had a problem with binging and with eating and carbohydrate addiction and everything. More so than I kind of really wanted to admit to myself. So when I was listening to Serena in the video, she spoke about how her daughters have a stall at a market, a booth, I think you call it in the States, and they make gluten-free cakes. And because she was talking about how she got into making tallow balm, I also make tallow balm. But she was talking about that, and she said that her daughters offered to make her some vanilla cupcakes for her birthday, I think it was. And so she said to them, yeah, make a double batch. And she said she remembers eating, I think it was 36 of those cupcakes in 24 hours. And she just, every time she went through the kitchen, she would sneak another one, stand there and eat it in the corner. And when she was talking about that, I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what I would have done in the past. Exactly. And you know, I've spoken on here about how, you know, I was highly plant-based and I was on this really healthy, what most people would consider a healthy diet, which I was for a lot of years prior to carnivore, but I still binged. And so when I kind of look back with honesty, and I think the reason that I can actually look at it now is finally on this high-fat version of carnivore, I feel so satiated. I have got no thoughts about eating other stuff really at all. You know, even before I started on the high-fat version 2 weeks ago, what I was finding for probably, I don't know how long, I'd been noticing that I was kind of having thoughts about other foods, you know, kind of getting a little bit obsessed about foods again. I hadn't been originally on carnivore, but that was kind of happening. It was this just niggly stuff that was kind of going on in my head about, you know, what can I eat next, and you know, what am I gonna, you know, what am I gonna eat? Like, it was kind of yeah, just a familiar kind of pattern, I guess, of thinking that was kind of going on in my head, and it was bothering me a little bit, and I don't know why it was happening. It may have been all the dairy that I'd been eating, because I'd been on the SIBO yogurt and L-Rootery yogurt for about 5 or 6 months. I think that the dairy was the reason that I gained weight. Now, looking back, I'm pretty sure that that's why I had gained, I'd regained about 4 kilos, and I think that was why now but I think just having that little bit of carbohydrate, because I'd have a glass of raw milk a couple of times a week, just that little bit was um, possibly kind of triggering something in me. I don't know. But I feel so incredibly different now after not quite 2 weeks on this way of eating. And as I said, I think that's why I can kind of look at this maybe with a little bit more objectivity, or maybe it's just time. I don't know. Maybe it's just time. Maybe listening to Serena the other day just kind of, it was time to go, yeah, that was absolutely me. And so I was talking to my husband about this morning, and I was saying to him, I used to do things, I mean, he didn't know that I would do this stuff. I would go to the supermarket after work, and I always had a real thing about those jelly type sweets, the snakes and those sorts of um, brightly coloured, soft, squishy lolly things. And so I would go to the supermarket and I would buy 2 packets of those, and I would eat one in the car on the way home, and then I would share the other packet with him, which I would eat most of because he eats them way slower than me. And so, I would do things like that, and it wasn't every day and it wasn't even every week. I mean, it might be once a month, but then so I'd go through stages where it might be every week, once a week sort of thing. But I would tell myself that that was okay because I was eating healthy the rest of the time. And I had done stuff like that since I was a child. I can remember as a kid sneaking stuff and hiding things and eating them when no one was looking. And then because I always had this um, body image thing, about being fat. And so, you know, I didn't want people to see how much I ate and that I was eating these things. And so it was really messy. Like, when I look back at those sorts of behaviors, it's I don't I kind of wonder why that I was like that. I think after eating the way that I am, I kind of realize now that I was never eating the correct food for my body, obviously, growing up. And so there was kind of always this drive to eat more, and that's what it felt like. But then the shame of eating more um, was a problem, being a girl and, you know, thinking that you're too fat, and, the fat people are the ones that sit there and gorge themselves, so you don't want to be looking like that. So kind of hide it and do it on the sly and on the sneaky. And, I always had a really sweet tooth. I mean, when I was younger, I was a real sweet tooth, real junk food addict. I would live on sweets and ice cream and milkshakes and things like that when I was young. I mean, I did when I was pregnant with my first daughter, and that's obviously part of the reason why I put on so much weight. But they were always my preferred foods, always. I loved meat as well, but there was never a whole lot of that in our house, and I just kind of always had this belief that meat wasn't really very good for you. The sweets were okay. It's a really weird thing. So, eating starchy things like bread and pasta and all of these things were kind of my favourite things. I remember going to a party at my brother-in-law's place, and his wife was from the Philippines, and they make this, she had made this dessert thing that was really stodgy, like sweet and stodgy, and oh my God, that was so good. I can't even remember what it was or what it was called. I actually made it myself after that a few times. But things like that were my absolute favourite things to eat. And then over the years, moving into a vegetarian diet and a vegan diet, and sort of gluten free, and eating a supposedly healthier and healthier plant based diet, I still kind of gravitated towards the sweet things. And so, in Australia, when we lived there, I used to do a lot of juicing, and so I would juice vegetables and fruits together. And I always did a lot of smoothies. So, the smoothies would have, all the greens and things. It might be full of spinach and stuff, but it would also have, dates and banana and, things to make it sweet in there. And so that was my healthy version of the sweet treats that I used to have, that I believed were okay. And that was how I managed to still get my sweet fix, and but even in amongst that, I would still have the binges every now and then, and I'd go and find, like, I would keep an eye out always for gluten-free snakes and things like that, which brands were gluten-free, and I would buy those and eat those every now and then. And I don't even know really what triggered it, but I would just have my little binges, and or big binges often, and that's the way that I always was. But I didn't want to admit to myself that I had a problem with that. It was kind of, I'd do it, hide the packets. If I was coming home in the car, I'd hide the packet in my trouser pocket or whatever, and later on I'd sneak that into the rubbish, and never thought about the fact that that's the behaviour of an addict. It really is. It's the behaviour of an addict, and but that's what I did, and never kind of admitted to anyone that was a thing, but it actually was. I sometimes wonder when like when I think about the stuff, with food, because I was always aware when I was young that I had this constant thoughts about food, when I was in my 20s, as a teenager, and I'm not sure when I was in my 30s, because when I was in my 30s, I started to kind of clean up my diet and it got a bit better, but as a teenager and in my 20s, I was definitely a junk food addict, and I was aware of the fact that I would constantly be thinking about food, what I was going to eat next, what am I going to eat next, and I couldn't go for very long without eating, because I'd get the low blood sugar, hypoglycemia kind of jitters and that, and I just thought that was normal. But as I kind of cleaned up my diet, that stuff all kind of settled down and went away, and the obsessive thinking about food was less, but it was still there. Like, I was always obsessed, like fascinated with food and wanting to try new things, and within the healthy side of things, I was always like, I would always go into the aisles where there was all the organic food and the gluten-free. I still do it. I still go in and look at those. I don't buy anything, but I go in and look at them, because it's just always been a fascination for me, all the new different types of things that are being masquerading as food that come out and appear on the shelves. And so now, what I found especially in the last week, on this way of eating with the high fat and the moderate protein, is that I just feel incredibly satiated. I'm not thinking about food. I work out my macros, I work out what I'm going to eat, but because I kind of need to track it at the moment, because I'm not sure how much of everything I can have to stick within those macros, but I'm getting there. Even after a couple of weeks, it's kind of starting to become second nature as to how much I can have. But one of the things that I also noticed when I first started on it was my thoughts with regard to how much I could have. So that's always been a thing too, and even has been on Carnivore, is the fear of missing out on food. And I'm not sure why that is. I have a feeling it may be to do with growing up in a big family. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, and so I was saying to hubby this morning, you start off as the oldest child and you have everything, and then as the other siblings come along, everything has to be shared with them. And so I don't know whether that's why, because it always felt to me as a child like there wasn't enough of the foods that I wanted to eat in the house. The things that I really enjoyed, at a meal or whatever, there was never enough meat, and there was never enough, because I always felt like I needed more food. And I think that part of it has been a mental thing, and part of it has probably been physical, because my body was probably needing more nutrition, having these MTHFR gene mutations. There's probably been stuff going on there where my body was kind of, some of my cells were probably screaming out for different things that it couldn't get. I don't know, but that's kind of what I'm picking it is. either that or it's ancestral ancestral stuff. I mean, I'm Scottish and Irish, so we've been through famines and things. Whether there's something there, because I mean we do carry trauma in our DNA from our ancestors back about 7 generations, they reckon. Or yeah, I don't know, but it's definitely been a thing for me around food and that. But that whole habit of binging, trying to keep my arm up because my bracelet makes a noise on the table. That whole habit of doing that sneaky binging and eating and sneaking the packets into the rubbish and that, I'd never kind of really wanted to admit that that was a thing, and it really, really was. And like when I was younger, I used to do a lot of baking, and so I'd bake, and I would bake trays and trays of biscuits, and I would make slices and different things, and eat huge quantities of that stuff. Eat huge, hubby did as well, but I would sneak pieces when no one was around, and the excuse was that you're making them, for all of us and the kids, but it was because I wanted to eat it. So yeah, the whole food addiction, carb addiction, sugar addiction, binging behavior thing is really, I think it's probably really common and really messy, and it's so good now, right now, to be feeling really free from that. It's not, it feels different. Like this feels different, and so I don't know whether that's why I'm willing to actually jump on here and talk about it, because I kind of actually feel like I'm possibly really free from it. So yeah, how about you? Have you done any of this? Have you experienced any of this stuff? Comment or question down below, and I will get to those as soon as I can. I'd be interested to know who all has done this. I suspect that it's probably pretty common, and not wanting to admit to it is probably pretty common as well. But yeah, that's my dirty little secret that has kind of been there my whole life, as long as I remember. So yeah, if you like this video, make sure to subscribe and like and share if you want to do that. I thank you very much for watching and listening to my confession today, and I will talk to you again another day. Bye for now.